80,000 people died from overdose in the US, which is equivalent to one commercial airplane going down every day.
You know what I say to them? I said, listen, it's natural to feel shame, but you shouldn't. This is a chronic brain disorder.
The more I learned, the more I realized that addiction isn't a failing in somebody's, being. It's an actual craving, and it's physiological, and we need to treat it as such.
Don't add sympathy to grief. It's such a heavy emotion, it almost makes you drown.
Her son ended up being homeless, and she found him on the street, and he had overdosed. And she said that kid was loved, and if love could have saved him, he would be alive.
We put ourselves back in prison every time. And it's a monster. It's truly a monster. And that's what people don't understand.
Like, alcoholics might be seen as better than people who are taking meth or whatever. And I don't know, maybe it's time that we just started looking at all of it as kind of crazy, and these people need help.
Okay, welcome into the Cappy Hour Podcast Extravaganza with my guest today, Katie Rizzo. Hi, Katie.
Hi, it's good to be here.
So I recently joined a podcast guest matching service, totally fortuitous timing to have met Katie. And she sent me a message that said, I lost my son who was self-medicating with opioids and Xanax. He was 25. And I'd love to talk about how I found a way to continue living and the way in which shame covers people with addiction, making it hard to break free, and how systems are set up that make it difficult for anyone to get clean. And that happened on September 17th of 2024, and he was her firstborn of 3. And so despite that awful, tragic nature, and I'm so sympathetic to Katie, I could not be more excited to talk about this because I know she wants to use his loss to make a difference, and I want to use my addiction to make a difference because the system needs a lot of work, does it not?
Yeah, you can say that again.
I think your wording was the fact that rehab being 28 days typically is almost a joke, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and you've cited the success rate. You've talked about it for 70 to 90% typically relapse and
for opioids, yeah.
With opioids,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you think about how much money you spend on that, you would never, if somebody said, here, give me, $40,000 to $80,000 and I'll give you a 10% chance that I'll give you what you're asking for, you'd be like, no way.
Absolutely. It's crazy. And the fact that is even the courts, system for that as well. One piece of good news, I am on the state insurance. That's the penalty you pay for owning your own business. But I switched to one recently, started by the Boston Medical Center, that covers actually coaching, like addiction coaching. I was so impressed. And I haven't switched to that because it also covers mental health therapy for just a copay. My previous one didn't. So I was using BetterHelp and paying out of pockets.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, we have a lot of work to do there. And it's absolutely tragic, as well as how much education we need to give the medical community. Because another thing you talk about is that your son, Nicholas, was on a drug to help deter the cravings. And then his doctor said to him, and it was working, right? He'd gotten off and then said, you've been on for 3 months.
It's too many months. Yeah. Well, I'm sure you've discussed this on your podcast before, but right now with overdose, we have about, the year Nicholas died, 80,000 people died from overdose in the US, which is equivalent to one commercial airplane going down every day. I think the numbers have gone down slightly, I think by 1%. So it's still a commercial jet airlines going down. And instead of outrage, everybody's so full of shame that we're all quiet about it. And we're taking this as if it's just a problem with somebody's motivation or their self-will.
It's absolutely tragic. I loved hearing you give that stat. It's crazy. I've used it myself, not that the 80,000, but I've said this is like a plane crash a day. I've used it just for alcohol because the number of alcohol related deaths, and it's not just car crashes necessarily, it's a lot of them. is up there as well. I should have even prepared that number, but
we're all okay with it. Like, I think before Nicholas died, I used to think, oh, those are people who are having a problem with self-will. And it's because I was very ignorant. And after watching him struggle and be ashamed of himself, and me, I felt ashamed. My whole family was ashamed. We never talked about it, especially at like family events. We just kind of tried to booster Nicholas up as much as we could and make him seem like he was okay and pretend. And now I look back and I think, how insane is that? You know, he's got a disease and he was struggling with it, and he deserved a lot better than that.
absolutely.
I wish everybody got better than that. So, yeah.
Yeah. In fact, you said how it was like having an extra family member of addiction when you went to family events, and how embarrassing that was. You know, it's
Yeah.
crazy. It really is. You know, it reminds me, a guy I know recently doing a podcast, his intro talked about how Alcoholics Anonymous wasn't meant to be anonymous to the world. It was meant that what was said in the meetings stayed in the meetings, but it wasn't meant that you were supposed to be embarrassed to be seen. But as many may or may not know, a lot of people don't go to the meetings because they don't want to be seen at the meetings, even to be seen by someone else who's at the meeting for the same reason. Like, that is the ultimate shame.
Yeah.
Is it not? I mean,
Yeah, Nicholas did not want anyone to know. It was a really big deal to him. If we ever brought it up, there was a time when he was drinking in our home and he had an apartment, and we had to drive him home and had to let everybody know that he was too drunk to drive his own car. And the next day he was just so full of shame. I belong to Al-Anon, and so does my husband, which, as you know, is a self-help group for people who love somebody who's are struggling with addiction. And my first probably 10 times of going, I was like, I'd drive around the block, make sure nobody could see. You know, I'd park my car so that you couldn't see my license plate. I felt like this, I felt like you could put a banner on me, like terrible mother. And the more I learned, the more I realized that addiction isn't a failing in somebody's, being. It's an actual craving, and it's physiological, and we need to treat it as such.
absolutely. It is not a moral failing. And it's something we
No.
try to tell people struggling all the time. You know what I say to them? I said, listen, it's natural to feel shame, but you shouldn't. This is a chronic brain disorder. Some people don't like the term, but you are powerless against it while you're in throes of addiction and brainwashing. As you do the work and get stronger, you do have some power over it. Some also like to say you only have power over the first drink, and that's absolutely true. Or in the case of drugs, and that's what, by the way, this is great for me because it's all the same. I'm in communities that are alcohol only, but I've thought really, and I've even started my own community, Rewired Nation. And I think I will, maybe not to start to confuse the marketing, but include, or maybe have separate meetings, but it's all the same work. And the work is to strengthen. Like, why does the work? You strengthen your prefrontal cortex to fight off your midbrain, because it's the midbrain that's all about survival, and it places drugs and alcohol as number one ahead of everything else, food and water, everything.
Yeah.
So, and it does not distinguish.
Yeah.
And when you get a craving, your cortex shuts down. It literally shuts down. So the great analogy this neuroscientist I know is if you're in the desert for 5 days without water, and someone offers you a bottle of water but says you're going to lose everything, what are you going to do? Anyone would drink it.
Take the water. Yeah.
And then you satisfy the craving, and then you try to figure out how to get everything back. And that's how this works. And it's maddening that the world doesn't know it. And I want to educate the world. I want to be on the Today Show someday as a guest, like explaining, even like, right. And you're coming with me. Yeah.
Well, if you look at all the 80,000 kids, died the year Nicholas died 2 years ago. And where are those parents? Like, when he died, I was like, we're the only ones in the world who have lost a kid. I really thought that. And I went out in search of someone to show me, like, can parents live a life after this? Like, I don't know how to do this. Like, it just seemed absolutely impossible. And I started going to grief groups. And I'd meet parents who could talk about, oh yeah, my son or daughter died of, cancer, or of a drunk driver hit them. But nobody was talking about their kid dying of addiction. I finally found a group called LIT, Love in the Trenches, which is a group for parents who've lost their kid to addiction. And I can't tell you how meaningful it was to sit in a room or a Zoom room full of people who looked like they hadn't lost their mind, and that they tried and they fought a really big monster and lost. And they'd say things like, addicts or people who have addiction come from families that love them. I met a mom who her son ended up being homeless, and she found him on the street and he had overdosed. And she said that kid was loved, and if love could have saved him, he would be alive. And that was just so powerful for me to see an example that there are parents out there who love their kids who are addicted, number one. And also, number two, that it isn't something to be ashamed of. Like, that it's okay for me to say in public, I love my son. He was addicted, and I'm actually not ashamed of his addiction. I'm not ashamed of what his addiction made him do. He stole quite a lot of money from us. He was in a lot of car accidents. He did a lot of lying. At the end, he was so ashamed of himself. And you talk about that midbrain just was like screaming, more drugs, you're going to feel better. But he kept doing things, so he'd just feel worse. I think it's important that we start telling the truth, because there are so many people out there in the shadows who are just suffering, hurting, who've lost a kid to addiction, and who are kind of in the throes of addiction.
Yep. Yeah. It's so true. Yeah. You talked about people on your meetings you've attended sitting in the dark that don't want to even be seen. And that's fascinating about Alan, what you did with Alan on. I never thought about the family members like yourself that also feel shame even going to those meetings. It's so sad. It's crazy. This thing is a monster.
And why?
Right.
Why? Like, I love my kid. He struggled with something just like anybody else in the world struggles with something. It's too bad he ended up picking, or not picking even. It's too bad he got kind of a love for these pills, because I'd watch him. He'd wake up in the morning, he'd call us, or he'd come over and he'd say, that's it. I can't do this. I'm so ashamed of myself. Please believe in me. Please give me one more chance. And we'd be like, no problem, buddy. And I know his resolve was like 100% there. I'm 100% in. And then by the time 3 or 4 o'clock came around, you could just see it was like he had just held onto a cliff for far too long, and he couldn't hold on anymore. I think in like 10 or 15 years, hopefully, we'll figure out kind of what the cause of addiction is, and we'll like laugh that we try to ask people to do this on their own. And when you look at that, AA has a better success rate than rehabs, and AA is free, and rehabs are so expensive. It drives me crazy. It's like we really need to sit down and look at what is effective and how do we help people and put them way over the profits of really well-intentioned rehabs or the drug companies.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. And a stat that my boy Claude AI gave me today was that it's bad enough the people that seek treatment. Claude claims 91% don't receive treatment at all, which blew my mind.
But do you have lots of examples of that in your own life? Because I have lots of examples of that in my own.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Definitely.
Somebody going to a rehab, waiting in line, and then just being like, this wait's too long, I gotta go. One of my really good girlfriends, her son struggles with alcohol, and he went to a detox, and he was just like crawling out of his skin, and there were 3 people in front of him, and actually one of the women in front of him said, "You're hurting more than I am. You can jump in line and take my place." He couldn't even wait for those 2 people ahead. He had to leave and go drink again, because we don't understand how to treat people who are suffering with this.
Wow. Yeah, it's awful. It is absolutely awful, and it's killing me. I want to scream from the rooftops like, join my community. It's free at the moment. I mean, eventually I'll have some paid tiers, coaching, sadly, you have to charge for, but it's like, I want to help you get clean. And it's so hard. But and also free doesn't people don't have as much a commitment to it. So I've really struggled to figure out
Mhm.
how to market myself. And I hate feeling like I'm asking people or trying to sell people, but I just want to get on social media and scream, send people my way. I know what you need to do is because I kind of do know the cure. The first time I really said this out, well, there's no cure, but the way to get people into permanent remission, because there's not a cure. And what it is and what your son experienced every day was the voice that I've never heard
Yeah.
anyone explain, frankly, as well as Dr. Cappy here. That is the voice of the neural pathway that we built up and is so deeply entrenched that thinks alcohol or the drugs is the answer to everything. And it's so entrenched that, unlike normal neural pathways that if you don't use, they atrophy and die, these are with you for life. But the good news is you can build a road, again, superhighway, picture it, but then you can bury it. You could pave over it. You could build over it. And you can also show it that there's a new voice in town. But you have to do hard things sober. You have to do the work, and that just starts initially by showing up to meetings and just listening. Sharing really can accelerate your recovery because it engages your prefrontal cortex, your language skills. You have to strengthen. Our cortexes just get beaten down by drug and alcohol abuse. It truly does brain damage, but sadly we don't care because we're in the throes of addiction. We don't love ourselves enough.
Because it's kind of like that quote that you had on a different day. It was something about how alcohol gives you the exact opposite of what you want. And what you were saying there really reminded me of that because I know Nicholas really wanted to feel free and at peace. And his addiction gave him the exact opposite. He was constantly thinking about how to lie and cheat and steal to get his benzodiazepines or his Valium and his oxycodone.
It's so sad. It gives us that survival level euphoria, that first hit, if you will. And that's something that it takes a long time to stop romanticizing or just realize that's all it is. And then it doesn't work. We say with alcohol, it works for 20 minutes at best. And then it just works against.
Then you start wanting it as more of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you said that the midbrain, there's this visual that I was taught for teaching, but how teenagers, like here's the frontal cortex and it's wrapped over the midbrain and the lower brain stem. And when you get mad, you flip your lid and the frontal brain kind of goes offline. When you were talking, I was thinking about that with Nicholas and how it kind of was like when he started craving his drug, it was like his frontal brain was gone and he really did flip his lid, and it just, you couldn't logic with him. If logic would get somebody sober, my husband and I would have won this because we tried so many times to explain to Nicholas, like, look, you've got all this. You could go to college in this. We're willing to put money into this. Like, all you have to do is be clean. That's all. And we were asking the impossible at him.
Yep. It's awful. First off, when we get a craving, our brain releases a little bit of dopamine to get us to seek more. So that's what we're up against. And again, that cortex, and I love that hand analogy there, it shuts down.
Mhm.
We're left with no rational thought. There is no willpower. So that's the problem. People are trying to apply rational thinking to an irrational disorder. That's what it is. And all those people that are vilifying drunk drivers and the like, they're only adding to the problem and adding more incidents, et cetera. It's awful. There has to be a level of empathy and understanding. And where everyone can relate, the ultimate analogy is your cell phone. Never mind that water analogy, because everyone should get that anyway, but go try putting your cell phone across the room and see how long you can hold out with your brain every second saying, grab it, grab it, grab it, grab it, grab it, grab it. That's literally how our brains work in the throes of addiction. Drink, 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 or I don't know how I'd say for drugs. Hit, hit, hit every second. And it gets louder and more repetitive throughout the day. And yeah, it's awful. I owned a pizza shop for 5 years during COVID, 50 yards from a liquor store. It was not the best idea to buy it, but I had a month to get sober before I took it over, and I thought I could do it. Big mistake. But so all night, it would just be like drink, 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 drink. And then when I finally caved, I'll tell you, those first few sips were euphoric, but it was all over from there.
I'd even heard that you get the high from before you take the pill or before you take the drink, and that it's not even like once you've taken the pill or once you've taken the drink, that euphoria is almost gone, just because it's like that, almost like you're just chasing hope. And I feel like that's what Nicholas was doing.
Yeah. You know what? You're really chasing the time when it did work, because sadly, there was a time that it did work for us before. Those of us with the disorder, and it doesn't have to be genetic. You can drink or do drugs into the disorder, that you just build such a neural pathway that your brain decides it cannot live life without it, to the point it thinks it's even protecting you, but you just never forget that feeling of when it worked. So you're right. You romanticize it. It's the same as it's an abusive relationship. That's another one. Who hasn't questioned somebody, sadly, typically a woman, that goes back to an abusive lover? Right?
Yeah.
Well, that's what this is. And now I get it. Or even a cult. I talked to a woman in my community who's a cult member. That you romanticize it, and you can't imagine your life without it is the big thing. You know, we put ourselves back in prison every time. And it's a monster. It's truly a monster. And that's what people don't understand. You know, you mentioned, I think it was a former student at the hospital, and then she was all chippy at first. And then when you told her your son's name, she changed tunes, right?
Yeah. I don't know if it's the drug and alcohol companies or if it's the rehab companies, or it just seems like we're so mass marketed that this is the way the world should be, and that those people who can't deal with it are expendable. If you look at how many people who are homeless who are addicted, if you look at how many people who are in jail right now who are addicted, if you look at just how many people are in rehabs right now, the human cost it's enormous. And we really don't talk about it. I mean, when Nicholas passed away, I kept thinking, oh, people are going to drive by my house and be like, oh, that's the house of the people who lost their son to addiction. And that they would look down on me. And maybe they still do. I don't know. But I've come to a place where I realize that there's nothing that Nicholas did that I'm ashamed of. He had a physiological disease, and it took him, and he really struggled and wanted to be something else. And I look at people like you and other people who are able to fight it, and I just hope we learn, like, what are the tools that we need to give people so that more people can fight it and get through it. I mean, Nicholas was in ICU for 6 days with swelling of the brain from coming off benzodiazepines and opioids. And those were like prescribed to him, which is it just floors me. And when he got out, the first thing he wanted was to get high again. And it was like, dude, that you almost died. And I think he felt like he was dying without it. I feel like he needed something to get him over the hump. And by over the hump, I don't mean just a few days. I don't mean 30 days or 60 days. I think he needed something for a few years where he had support and understanding. And it was in a situation where there was absolutely no shame. And I feel like people who have addiction are vilified. I get a lot of weird posts he would like on Instagram, and there's this woman who keeps popping up for me, and I keep saying no, but she's a real hater of people who have addiction. And I don't know, it's time that we started valuing the hundreds of thousands of humans that are struggling.
Absolutely. It's crazy. Again, it comes from such ignorance, these people that don't get it. And yeah, I imagine it is even worse, something just off the top of my head, even worse for drug users, because at least alcohol, there aren't drug bars, but there are alcohol bars, and there aren't drug commercials. Well, there are drug commercials, but because yeah, you're right. Our society has a love-hate relationship with alcohol. You could probably say drugs as well, right? It's like we glamorize this thing, the mommy wine culture and everything else. Oh, but then you got addicted and you overuse it. Oh, then it's your problem. And
Yeah.
then you're a drunk. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. I mean, yeah, I say it all the time.
The policeman who brought me Nicholas's phone and his computer, he said that in his experience that people who did opioids for 8 days or more, he said it was almost impossible to get them better or free of them. And he said, I know that people say like, oh, you have to have the gene for it. He goes, I don't think with certain drugs is the gene. And it may not be the gene for alcohol too. But he said, let me put you in a room and give you meth for 7 days and we'll see if you can fight it on your own. And I don't know, that really convinced me. I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have enough, quote, self-will to feel the feelings that Nicholas went through, where he went through such big highs and then such low lows.
Yeah, it's to me the genetic component is that, well, whether it's genetic or you drink or drug yourself into it, it is that your brain gets permanently rewired. So, but it's true. Anyone can get addicted to an addictive substance. Absolutely. To me, the distinction I make is addiction is almost a misnomer in this case, in the case of having the disorder, alcohol use disorder, alcoholism, drug disorder. An addiction is, a severely ingrained habit perhaps, but it's a ingrained habit that you can potentially beat with willpower. An addiction disorder, you really can't. You can't do it on your own. You can't beat with willpower. And you do have that neural pathway typically for life. So the only real distinction is with the kind of a regular addiction, if you give it up long enough, in the case of alcohol, maybe you can go back to drinking alcohol after a very long time, after you completely disassociate it from everything else. And perhaps in the case of prescription drugs, maybe as well. But once you develop that dependency, that it's the answer to everything.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I just heard a podcast. A guy said the dopamine hit from meth is like 1 to 10,000x, which is just crazy. I mean, just an example, they say alcohol gives you 150% dopamine hit. So think about how much stronger that is.
Nicholas tried fentanyl on purpose, and I think it scared him, which it should have. All drugs should have scared him. But we've been in support groups with parents whose kids have done fentanyl and passed away. And the shame with fentanyl, and it's like people will like murmur it or not talk about it. We met a dad who lost both of his sons at the same time to a fentanyl overdose. And the dad said they'd never tried fentanyl before, and they were not drug addicts. And I wanted to be like, it's okay if they were. Like, they're still precious and wonderful human beings. And fentanyl is cheaper than Oxycontin. And if you don't have money and you aren't stealing, then that's going to be the drug that you go towards. So it makes me really kind of crazy sad how we've got this like almost highbrow view of addiction, and like alcoholics might be seen as better than people who are taking meth or whatever. And I don't know, maybe it's time that we just started looking at all of it as kind of crazy, and these people need help.
Yeah, and fentanyl, I can't even imagine. I was so lucky when I was in high school, an athlete named Len Bias went to Michigan, I believe, and he got drafted by the Celtics as their number 1 pick. And to celebrate, he apparently did cocaine. There were rumors it was the first time he ever did it, but then I don't think that was true. But either way, he died. And it was huge news in Boston because it was huge news. The Celtics, who are always good, so they never got a number 1 draft pick. and they got one and the guy died. But I never forgot that. And thanks to that, I never tried cocaine. You know what I did try was Adderall. About a year ago, I did a 7-week Adderall experiment, as I call it, because it was 7 weeks, not 8, because I ran out a week early for the 30-day supply. Because, as my favorite meme says, oh, there's a pill that cures addiction. I wonder what 2 of them will do. We can never get enough.
Yeah.
And also, and you kind of allude to it earlier, as we progress, our brain shuts down. It gets flooded with all this artificial dopamine. It shuts down the dopamine receptors. So we need more and more to get higher and higher, which means it gives us much less of a hit, if you will. And that 150% from alcohol probably goes down to like 20%. And then you know what we do instead? The ultimate cravings overcomer and mood enhancer. And it's honestly is a quasi, at least the start of a cure for addiction. So simple. It's a magic dopamine machine right in your bathroom called the shower, specifically the cold shower. Cold shower finishes give you a 250% dopamine kick. Only at 57 degrees, they say, for 1 to 3 minutes. Start off with baby steps. They say women shouldn't go under 55. So you can still, it's life-changing. The problem is when someone gets a craving, convincing them to go, just a regular shower will change your nervous system. That alone should overcome a craving. But particularly that cold shower finish will give you that dopamine hit that you're seeking.
With Nicholas, we tried to get him to exercise more because he loved exercising. He played a lot of soccer, but, who wants to go run, 3 miles when you can take a pill and feel a little bit better? So,
yeah, it is. That is so hard to motivate people to exercise, and sadly, I'll just say that the way to get motivated is to move. But the last thing you want to do is move. It's amazing how that works. I had to drag myself out. I missed a few days of exercising recently, and I do this thing called star jumps, like jumping jacks with squats. I was so miserable doing them. Well, you may have seen my video. Warning to all, alcohol is toxic to your nerves, and I have alcoholic neuropathy in my heels that has actually gotten worse despite my 2+ years of sobriety. I took a few days off, and I was miserable this morning, but I go out in the sun to do them every day. Miserable when I started. And then by the time the first dance song finished, I was good to go. So, it really is the key, just baby steps. But when you're in the throes of addiction, nobody wants to hear that. Even just a regular shower, but again, trying to make it a little cold. But I'm telling you, I need to do a whole platform on that because it's a huge, because not only is it a cravings overcomer, it's a guaranteed hard thing sober every day. It's embracing the discomfort, which is another huge part of recovery. So there's an article I'll put in the show notes. I should put every time, but a guy wrote 6 life-changing benefits of cold shower finishes. You would have thought he wrote it for addiction. It's amazing. He goes, it helped me handle situations, discomfort inside and outside of the bathroom. And that's what it's all about. So
isn't it funny how I think that's what Nicholas wanted the most, was to feel comfortable in his own body, which he didn't feel comfortable in his own body. And also to feel like people thought highly of him. And the only way to get somebody to think highly of you, I think, is, it's an AA saying, is like you have to do something esteemable. You want to have a high self-esteem, do something esteemable. And the only way to feel comfortable in your own body is to love yourself and do the hard work, which is, exercising and eating well and going to work every day.
Yep. And community is so key. And the only problem with AA, it's not a fit for everyone. A lot of women find it very, men should as well, but it's very old school, patriarchal. It's very religious, and it's not a fit. So, you've got to find the community that works for you. And there's a ton of them now online, which is to me even better because I can just pull it up on Zoom. I never want to go to AA meetings because I didn't want to have to cross town to go to them. I haven't stayed sober for 3.5 years. Part of my motivation was so I didn't have to go to AA meetings, even though I found them fascinating. But I was a hermit So I didn't want to leave my place. And even AA only works for somewhere like around 15% of the people, which means it doesn't work for 85%. But the failure is really more of a matching problem, not a program problem, so you've got to find the right one. And I know you said Nicholas was it AA he was going to? I believe even the day that he passed, they wouldn't let him come to the meeting because he allegedly wasn't participating. But what was his relationship with community? Because community will love you until you love yourself. How great is that?
I think back and I'm like, man, where were his AA people? Because he kept getting, and maybe it's on him, I don't know, but he kept getting involved in groups where either he would befriend the people who were suffering and wanted to go get a hit, and you'd go with them. In rehab, he ended up befriending a kid who had been to that rehab 14 times. And when Nicholas got out, that kid went and lived on Nicholas's couch. He just needed the people who were sober. He needed the sober friends. It would have made such a big difference. But yeah, he was an outpatient and he got kicked out the day that he died for not participating. So it wasn't that he was using, but it was that he wasn't participating. And I think he saw the people in his group as being too old for him, which, I don't know, maybe he needed to get to a place where he saw humans as human.
Did he go to AA or NA? You don't hear much about.
NA tends to be younger. I think you have to be ready. Like, you have to hit your bottom, whatever that is. Like, he showed up and it just wasn't enough. So he did try AA, he did try NA, he did AA for a little while because I have his big blue book. He stopped at the third step because his sponsor's writing stopped. But it's amazing, right? That it's all on you. And I hope people that are listening fight a little bit harder and try a little bit more. And if their group isn't fitting with them, go to another one. The saying of like, go to 6 meetings until you decide it's not good enough for you. No, just keep going to meetings, go to a meeting a day, 2 meetings a day, whatever it takes, because this is like a life or death illness. In AA, there's in the blue book I was reading, it was talking about there are 3 outcomes. You can either get sober, you can relapse, or you can die. And then the rest of the book talks about relapse or getting sober. And nobody talks about dying. And it really is an option.
Yes, it is. I was going to bring that up because you said you want to, you don't want there to be another one. And you wanted Nicholas to be the last one and get the word out to people, especially kids, that this is a life and death. But it's for everybody. I thought for my community of just doing a Rocky theme, and I still might. I'm definitely going to do meetings about this. Is a battle for your life. It truly is. In fact, there's a book, Lauren McCowan, We Are the Luckiest. Her friend says, or she says to her friend early on, she's like, this is so hard doing the work. And the friend says, It should be hard. You're in this battle for your life. It is not talked about. And by the way, a warning on the bottom of alcohol ads or drugs that says, if you need help, call 1-800, and you see those now on gambling ads.
Mm-hmm.
It's infuriating because it's not going to make a dent. And sadly, gambling's a whole nother one that's works the same way.
Yeah, Nicholas tried gambling. I think he got banished from a bunch of gambling sites.
Yep, it works same way. It's interesting in that I thought Google had said there are not such thing, that addictive personalities are a myth, but there's definitely some correlation there in terms of just dependency that you
rush.
do.
Yeah,
and the rush. Yes, that you may be more prone to get rushes from anything
But all of these cycle into that shame spiral, right? Like, you're never gonna call the police and say, hey, I just spent $10,000 on this stupid website. They'll say, oh, it's all on you, which it really is on them. Nicholas had to learn the hard way. But also, it's like these things are preying upon you. And I don't know. Nicholas played a lot of soccer. He had a lot of injuries. And so he was prescribed a lot of opioids. And I think that started him down the path. He had a lot of social anxiety, and his doctor prescribed him benzodiazepines, Xanax, so that for his social anxiety. I feel like there's just so many ways out there for people to make money off of people who have this addictive personality or who have, these imprints in their brain. I don't know. It's kind of astounding that we're allowing this. Every time my husband's big into watching sports, and the ads for all the different sport betting things just drive me crazy. And all the liquor ads where everybody looks like they're having the best time and they have the best community and everyone's happy. I don't know why we're allowing this.
Yeah, it's infuriating. Back to the plane crash per day stat and yet, because it is the same alcohol and drugs, and yet we're celebrating alcohol all the time. They showed Travis Kelce, the football player, on the Jumbotron at a recent playoff game, chugging a beer. It was infuriating, infuriating. And, my buddies who aren't even outspoken even said, that is so bad for kids to even see.
Yeah.
It's
why the famous people are giving their name for the sports betting things.
Oh, yes.
And I just watch. I'm like, please, no, I don't want to see this. So
I meant to say that. I was totally going to say that 2 seconds ago. It infuriates me. Every celebrity I see. And the only slight pause I give is, how do I know for sure I wouldn't just take the bag of cash? But that's all they're doing. And it's like, don't you have enough, or can't you make money in other ways? But I think it's as misunderstood as everything else, as drugs and alcohol. People don't understand. It's the same thing. It is such a dopamine hit. You get the craving, your cortex shuts down, you're left with your midbrain. You do not care, to the point you don't care if you're bankrupting your family. I even have a video on suicide, which frankly, I haven't had a ton of exposure to, but it occurred to me, and I did do some AI confirmation. It works the same way. The majority of people don't talk about it, and talking about is the number one way to help start overcoming it. Gauge your cortex.
Yeah.
So every time people say, oh, it's so I thought I was once one of those. Suicide is so selfish. How could you do that to your family? Especially if you have a wife or spouse and kids. How could you do that? That's applying rational thinking to an irrational situation. That's not the way they're thinking.
I think Nicholas wanted to go away. I think things got so bad with his shame that he wanted to escape. I don't think he wanted to die forever, but I do think he wanted to feel good just for a few minutes. Yeah.
That's what it was. And you never forget that feeling. Never forget it. And even the Adderall, just to finish on that quickly, I got the first day I took it, I had no idea. I mean, this is almost comical. I had no idea till I looked at the bottle that says something like bath salts. I don't think it's bath, but it says something salts. But it says salts, which I only knew, sadly, from the guy that took bath salts and attacked someone, I think tried to eat their face. And then I found out, yeah, it's meth. I even did a video recently. I said, watching Breaking Bad, I never thought I would ever be taking meth, and Adderall is slow acting meth, and it's not even that slow. So I took it that day within an hour. I took it at 3 p.m. because that just so happened to be when the prescription was ready, and I couldn't take it fast enough. I shoved it in because I do have severe ADD, and I wanted to be functional. And I thought slow release was like other slow release drugs that took a week to get into your system. So I even took a second one later that night. Oh, but the point is, within an hour, I was flying. That day, I happened to drink full calf coffee. I normally just drink half calf. I was flying. I thought it was the caffeine. I did not even associate it with the Adderall. It wasn't even until weeks later I Googled, how quickly does Adderall take effect? And yeah, I never took it properly in the morning. I always waited, even though it was an extended release version. And I was very lucky to get off of it. I ran out of pills a week early and was going on vacation. If I wasn't, Yeah, who knows? So that's my only relation to
Well,
drug addiction. But
for kratom, I don't know if you know
oh,
what kratom is.
oh yeah, I know all about
So
it.
Nicholas at his rehab, they were allowing them to go and get they were going to a pot shop and they weren't they said, "Oh, the owner knows that these guys are all in rehab, so they only get nicotine." But I think that he was getting kratom because after he'd go, the therapists were saying that he disassociated and he was testing negative for drugs, but he was out of it and zoning out. And kratom is actually an opioid agonist and is addictive. And since Nicholas passed, I've met two moms in my grief groups whose kids have died from taking kratom from a gas station. And so it's just like, taking an opioid as well.
Yeah, kratom is crazy. I do know one woman that actually shared a few times on sobriety calls that works for her. Then she almost felt bad because she mentioned it because, yeah, she's the only one I've heard. Yeah, it's a stimulant and it's awful. People, did you hear in New York City, they shut down like street vendors that were selling a combination of kava and kratom in liquid form. I unknowingly bought some off of an Instagram ad. It was talking
Yeah.
about calming. This was about 6 months ago, and I was like, I could use a little calming. I'm trying to get off coffee, which I've since quit. I'm on day 13, by the way, day 12. Thank you very much. And I got the little bottles, and it said kava and kratom, and I was like, oh my god, this is what they're trying to shut down. Yeah,
Well, if you think about Nicholas, he's in a rehab. It's costing a ton of money, and they're letting him go get the drug that he's actually trying to get well from. And it's just the saddest story. No wonder he couldn't get away from opioids.
I know. But you bring up the treatment of drugs and alcohol. I remember San Francisco, I believe, was actually giving, was it drugs or alcohol to like homeless in an attempt to get them off. I mean, that's what's crazy too. The whole withdrawal thing, right? Is tapering. Tapering really does not work. I was so glad to hear someone else say that. I know a woman and was in my community. She was beloved. She was one of my biggest supporters. She kept telling me she had this woman she was talking to that told her taper off of wine. And I said, stop listening to that woman. You just need, and yes, if you have severe withdrawals, it's dangerous. You got to seek medical help. But she wasn't at that level. And she just kept tapering and never just quitting. And one day we got notice that she died. Her family told the community she died. And I did want to circle back to the life and death thing because, and I assume it was, she just drank way more one night
And
than she ever
yeah.
anticipated. It can kill you. Alcohol poisoning kills people. Some people don't realize it. There was another guy in one of my communities. He was the biggest cheerleader. I mean, isn't it sad? It always seems to be, you always hear the greatest people, but this guy truly was. He was on camera for every call. He put support in the comments and on camera. His name was Carl. He would light up. And he shared on a men's call once that he almost drank himself to death. And the doctors told him if he did it again, he would die. And I actually kind of, it was almost rude of me, but he didn't really talk enough about it. So I got on during my share and said, Carl, really love you to come back on and talk more about this. And I texted him after to talk about it. He still didn't want to. He said, it'll come in time, but my mother's coming out. And a week later, while his mother was even out there, I got a text from him, but it was his mother saying, we lost Carl tonight. And he drank himself to death. And I guarantee that night, he just thought he was going to have one. He just wanted to take the edge off to feel comfortable in his own skin. And then, but once you start, you can only control that first drink. So
I think there's like a little bit of Superman in a bunch of addicts or people who have addiction. Because I know Nicholas used to say, Mom, I know what I'm doing. Those people, they're dumb. The ones that died, they don't understand. I've got this. I understand. I know what has fentanyl in it and what doesn't. I know the amount of fentanyl I can handle. I've got this. I'm smart enough. And he wasn't smart enough. And I don't think anyone is. This is just a monster that you have to turn your back on, and you can't do even a little bit of it.
Yeah, you have to surrender. It's an AA lingo, right? I mean, you truly do have to surrender to it. I just saw a podcast. The guy was talking about a term I'd never heard, libidinal attachment.
Well,
I didn't even confirm it has to do with libido or not, but it's that kind of libidinal. But he said that's what we form to things. And when you give up drugs or alcohol, you're going to be in a gray period, which I also always talk about. It's called anhedonia, where you can't get pleasure in ordinary things. It's a very
yeah.
gray and sufferable period. But he said, until
He used a
you,
word though. Like anhedonia or whatever is, it's not
anhedonia,
even,
yeah,
it's not just flat. You feel the worst feelings you've ever felt. At least from when I saw Nicholas, it wasn't just a lack of feelings. It was, there was no good in the world, you know?
yeah,
And the
yeah,
only thing could solve that is time or taking the drug. We need a better word.
yeah, yeah, we do.
Like the
And
pit of despair.
yeah, it's awful. It really is. And it's all because of the artificial drugs hijack your pleasure baseline, and you have to stay sober, stay patient till it comes back down. Otherwise,
Yeah.
nothing ordinary is going to give you that. Again, imagine a meth user that's 1,000 to a 10,000x dopamine. Even my cold showers can't compete with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's brutal, but you have to. And so this podcast, the guy said, you have to accept it. You have to mourn that loss to break that attachment. And then we naturally will then eventually form attachments to other things. But it can take a very long time. And most people just don't have the patience for it to wait for that to happen. And that's why being in community is so important, because you've got to get those dopamine hits from home. You know, I used to say there were 3 things for me every day in early sobriety to get my dopamine hits. It was sunlight and exercise. Those are kind of one. My cold shower finish and sharing. And if I didn't get all 3 of those
Yeah.
things, I was missing on something. So
Community is really important. And I feel like maybe for those people that are listening who are sober, just if they could just hear me and remember how important they are in AA meetings to new people who are still struggling, like the more that they can share their experience, strength, and hope, the better kids like Nicholas are going to be. And I wish there would have been some, old timer who would have looked Nicholas in the eye and grabbed him and said, like, you can do this and I'll walk you through it.
yeah, you just reminded me the power of coaching. People need a coach in their corner. And,
Yeah.
big parts of the work are therapy, sharing, and coaching. Therapy for the past, coaching for the future, and then sharing helps with the present and the past and the future. I mean, sharing is so powerful. Dr. Cappy says it accelerates your recovery 588%. You got to be ready for it. Most people fear it because they fear judgment, not only from others, but of themselves. And that's a huge problem.
And that judgment is like, I think Nicholas was so worried that people would find out all the stupid stuff he did. And I hope that whoever is listening knows that after Nicholas died, like, we found out so many things that he did and none of it is important. And I still love him and I am not ashamed of him. And he did some terrible stuff. And I know it was the addiction. I really hope that we start treating people who have addiction with a lot more kindness and grace, and that the crazy stuff that they do, it's very painful to people, especially, driving drunk or high. It's not excusable, but man, I love my kid and I would do anything to have him back. And I wish that I could take that shame and fear out of people so they could go get help.
Yeah, it's awful. I'm with you. And that, to finish on the coaching thing, yeah, for them to feel like they have someone in the corner that they can confide in, it's not going to judge them beyond family and friends even, because yeah, as you become just basically pathological liars. You talked about times when he looked awful, but he would tell you he was doing well. I mean, yeah, nobody wants to admit it. And yeah, I tell coaching clients all the time, I say, you can never disappoint me. Don't worry about that. Just be honest with me. But I used to lie to my coach. She'd be like, Brian, have you been drinking? I was like, no, Hope, I'm just super excited right now. And I was very lucky. I started with this woman, Hope, who was a former sales colleague that became a coach. And she took me on. She needed initial clients for free. And that's the only way I started with a coach. But she was pivotal to my recovery. She didn't have alcohol expertise, nor did my therapist. And I wish I listened to a therapist a long time ago. She said, Brian, I don't have addiction expertise. You should get some with that. But I said, oh, but I really like you. But I should have. So you really have got to get therapists and you need both. You really do need both. Hope would even stop me and say, Brian, that's something to work with your therapist on. That's stuff for the past, but they'll help you with the future and help keep you motivated and have someone to confide in. So there's so many ways of doing the work, but it's so, so important. So do you feel we have so much more to talk about? We'll probably have to wrap it up, and we're going to get to your book, which you have coming out in October, although it's available now for pre-order. But before I get to that, oh my God, there's so many things. But one, we could do an entire podcast on this. I was, I guess, pleasantly surprised to hear on a podcast you just did, the woman talk about how people should talk to someone that has experienced loss. My roommate in college lost his mother right before we started college, freshman year, to cancer. And I never brought up his mother in 4 years. Mother's Day especially, never once said, how are you healing?
No, right? It was like, I don't even know what to say.
Well, not only that, I thought it was the worst thing I could do was to bring it up and just make him sad. But I've since learned kind of on my own, it's the opposite. People like to talk about, oh, you know what it was? I had testicular cancer 15 or so years ago. And people are like, oh, do you mind talking about it? I was like, hell yeah, I'd love talking about it. It helps. And then I realized it's the same thing. So Maureen Alessi is her name. And she said, don't add sympathy to grief. It's such a heavy emotion, it almost makes you drown. So she had lost her husband. She said, ask me about him. Just like people should ask you about your son. And even talk to you as if, he was still with you. Not like you have 3 sons, one's passed. But it shouldn't then, she said, if you then get all depressed, you make them feel responsible now for your energy or your depression, right? So you agree with that?
Yeah. Brene Brown has a kind of a cute meme where there's somebody deep in a hole and there's somebody standing above them and they're like, oh, you poor thing. And then there's a different picture and that person is now down in the hole with them and they're holding their hands. And that's the difference between sympathy and actually like being there with somebody who has grief. Like, I definitely have been on the side where I feel like people pity me. And then I've also been on the side where I feel like people want to be there in the pit with me. I used to be a high school teacher, and one time I was in an exercise class and I saw this one teacher who we were never friends and we were always competitive about things. And like we didn't have a very good relationship. And I saw her and I thought, man, she's looking at me and thinking like terrible things because my son died. And she walked right up to me and said, can I give you a hug? And it was just, it was so beautiful. It was like, you're a human being and I'm a human being. And sometimes it isn't what you say, but how you say it. But just, I love the visual of somebody coming down into the pit with you. And I guess that would work in alcoholism and drug addiction too. That I feel like a lot of times with Nicholas, I was above him telling him what he should do. And I wish I would have jumped down into the pit with him and just held his hand and, said this pit, this place really, it's terrible.
Yeah, it's tough, and you so want to do the tough love thing. Although you said you hated to even punish him because you felt so bad and he felt so bad. It's true. Tough love doesn't work. So, it's funny. I even asked AI how suggested treatment, and the best he could come up with is it's not bad, and it's something I already was thinking of today as I was researching was something I did with my nephew. I did a practice podcast with my nephew who was around 16 at the time. And I talked to him about my alcoholism. I said, Henry, do you know it runs in the family? Do you know I'm an alcoholic? And it was a conversation I never would have had if we weren't doing this mock interview. And what Claude suggested, I had never heard of, was called motivational interviewing. And I guess it's a therapy technique. And you talk about the person, what they envision for their life and where they want to go with it, and then help kind of get them to realize they're never going to get there if they continue to use. But even that, and that's the best AI's
Being
got.
curious.
I hate it. It doesn't,
Yeah.
in the throes of addiction, even that really is not all that effective. I mean, sadly. I mean, a great quote I need to give more often. There was a sober woman was at the Masters golf tournament, and this guy overheard that she was sober, and he turns to her with drink in hand and says, I was sober once for 8 years, the best 8 years of my life. As he's drinking, that shows you the power of this.
Yeah.
Absolute power of this.
It really does.
When I went even back, I quit for 3.5 years, but I wasn't doing it community. I was just doing hard things every day. I didn't even realize that was the key. But then I stopped doing those hard things, and I wasn't in community. I wasn't enjoying life because I didn't do it in community, so I didn't gain emotional sobriety. And I said, I'd rather end up drinking and end up in a ditch than continue to live this mundane existence sober, you know? And I heard another guy say similar. He goes, I'd rather die drinking than live sober. That's what a monster this is.
I know. The parallel for me, I mean, since I don't have addiction, is in grief. Like, it is very isolating. And I am so grateful that I have my Al-Anon friends, because they came straight over and they were like, I'm here as long as you need. And then they helped me reach out to find support groups for grief for parents who have lost a kid. And those support groups have been a lifesaver. And I don't think I ever believed that we are here on the planet to be with one another so much as after Nicholas left, because they're like what gets me through every day, for sure.
That's great that you have them. Yeah, it's so important. You know, another great community quote is that isolation leads to relapse and community leads to connection.
Yeah.
So yeah, you need it as well. And you mentioned the quote. I'm just looking at my notes of what I wanted to read, but you had heard me say on a different podcast, the quote from a longtime AA member, that I drank for happiness and became unhappy. I drank for joy and became miserable. I drank for strength and felt weak. And there's a bunch more, but it ends, I drank to feel heavenly and ended up feeling like hell. And that really sums it up. And especially the weak part. We're just so weakened in the throes of addiction. But it is, you just got addicted to an addictive substance. There's no shame in that. And it's crazy that everyone doesn't understand it.
Every time I look back at Nicholas's pictures, he was exhausted. He was fighting it 24/7. It's exhausting.
It is. And it's awful that you feel helpless. Do you feel any guilt?
Sure, I feel tons of guilt. I don't know that it helps the situation. I miss that kid. I love him. I think a lot about what we could have done better. I don't know what the answer is. My husband and my 2 other boys, we miss him something fierce. And I feel like we went up against a monster and we lost. And I'm disappointed in society. I feel like we're better than this.
Yeah.
Rehabs that we went to and spent all that money, they were, I don't know. I sent them Nicholas's obituary and nobody came. And not that they should have, but also like, it's just time that we did better.
It definitely is. It's tragic. And that's why I was so glad to see, as I said, my health plan even cover sobriety coaching. Like even that, we need a lot more coverage and access to. And the people responsible are the ones making billions off of the substances. You know, I do plan to become big alcohol enemy number 1 someday. I'm gonna say that if I ever get found murdered, they did it.
Yeah, let's not let the free market decide that all these plane loads full of kids and people, our loved ones, are more important than the free market. because I don't think they are.
Yeah, it's awful. Plane crash per day that is not talked about. And
the people who are struggling with alcoholism and drug addiction together, I mean, there are a lot of really miserable, hurting people who are hiding in the shadows, ashamed, and feeling like they are less than human and that they don't belong. And they do belong and they are important. And they're just doing the best they can. And they just need more people to stand up for them.
Yep, that is huge. And that's why I told you society is a huge part of the problem. All right, one more question and then we'll talk about your book and wrap it up. But I know you mentioned that sevens play a big part in your life. Your sons were born the 7th, the 14th, the 21st, and other ways. Have you seen any signs from him, as people often say? And do you think about that and see him in your dreams and the like?
Yeah, I see a lot of signs from Nicholas. I feel like I see so many signs that people would be like, oh, you're crazy, which is fine. I went to a grief group in Sweden last summer, and all the parents had lost their kids there to addiction. And everybody had a different thing. They'd be like, oh, my kid shows me this, my kid shows me that. And for a while, I really fought it. I was like, oh, I'm not going to be that woo-boo mom. But since then, I mean, we've had things that feel very undeniable. We had a bald eagle come and sit in our backyard for 2 hours and just sit and watch us, which I've never had that happen before. I had this really weird thing just happen. I have a friend who her son just died of an addiction, and I got a bunch of women that I know together who lost their son too. So there were 4 of us, and we went to coffee, and we were sitting there, and all of a sudden their music was like organ music, like a death music, like it was for forever. And one of the moms said, all right, boys, that's enough. And right then this song came on that none of us had ever heard. And it was about like, we're with you. And all of us were like trying to like figure out like, what is this song? So I don't know. I feel like there are times like that where I feel a little nudged from him.
That's great. I trust you've seen the movie Ghost long ago. Have you seen it recently?
No. That and Beautiful Boy are 2 that I'm not sure I'm ready for.
All right. I watched a clip of it in your honor today. I don't know. I just got thinking about that question I guess I just asked. And there's at the end, there's an amazing scene I forgot about where she's crying and she realizes like he's there and he comes and he's talking to her. And he says, I love you. I've always loved you. And he said, it's amazing, Molly. The love inside, you take it with you. It got me misty then and now. It's a beautiful scene. And I think you'd like it. But I was going to send you the link, but
maybe. I don't know. There are some things that just hit me and I'm like, oh.
All right. Well, I know you wanted something beautiful to come from all you've been through. So just us teaming up where I'm definitely going to keep in touch and even ideally have you back when your book comes out because there's so much more to be done on this. So speaking of your book, I'll say that you found that grief mirrored pregnancy. So it's called the Trimesters of Grief and how the first trimester is silent, but all consuming, invisible to others, but physically overwhelming. So good. And then the second trimester, grief grows, becomes undeniable and begins shaping life. And then the third, grief pushes outward, visible to the world, demanding recognition. And then there's the delivery, the lifelong work of caring for newborn grief and learning to live beside it, not within it. And one of your reviews even said how Nicholas's experiences mirror so many others in the world. You know, many feel isolated and alone. No one in the world understands, which is why community is so important because you hear your story come out of others' mouths. And they said your book will make them feel seen in a deeply powerful and human way. So sounds fantastic. Available for pre-order now. Anything else to say about it?
You can follow me or look me up at www.katierizzo.com. So thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. You're very welcome. There was one more note I was looking for. Oh, you talked about Nick Cave. I believe, yeah, Nick Cave, who I'd never heard of. I guess he's an Australian singer, but he's lost not one but two sons to addiction.
Well, his died of suicide. Both of his sons died from suicide.
Oh, okay. All right. I did not research that far enough. So, and by the way, your son, we talked about how this thing can kill you. And I mentioned a couple accidental deaths. I have another friend that died from withdrawal. I do believe they said he was having seizures when he died, never expected it. And you know, your son, it was accidental, right? He had laundry in, you know.
Yeah. Food defrosting. Yeah.
And he was taking prescribed drugs?
Oh, yeah. They were prescribed. I'm sure he got some other things, but he died of Xanax and opioids. Those were the only two things that were in his system. So, yeah.
Wow.
He might have gotten some off the street as well, but they were all 100% pure. So
that is awful. And that's unfortunately how it happens. You know, again, every day we basically wake up, you know, not intending to overconsume, and then it just can happen that quickly. So,
yeah.
But he talked about, and you said it was a big turning point for you, was.
Yeah. So Nick, I read, he talked about taking grief out of your body and having it sit next to you. And I thought it sounded very woo-woo and crazy, but I tried it and it's helped a lot. It's helped me to kind of visualize grief as being separate from Nicholas, separate from my love of Nicholas. And, you know, when you go and you're in the ocean and there's an enormous wave that's coming right at you, if you just stand there, it's just going to knock you over. I feel like something that's helped me kind of dive underneath the wave is picturing grief outside of my body. And it's kind of an orangutan with crazy hair, and I can nurture it and talk to it. And it's something that Nicholas and I made together. And I've been writing a lot of poems to him, and which is crazy, but that's just me. And grief is something you have to nurture and you have to take care of every day, and you can't ignore it.
Yeah. And once again, the book is called The Trimesters of Grief. And Nick Cave has a great line that, you know, grief is the terrible reminder of the depths of our love. And like love, grief is non-negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the struggle is real. And I just remembered, I have a cousin, a first cousin that died from drug use. He died of hypothermia, found under a stranger's porch. And on my Irish side of the family, everyone is either addicted or, you know, in the program or should be, and for generations. But just it was never really talked about. To this day, as I was researching today, I said, shame on me.
What's his name?
Timmy. Yeah. And my aunt, I'm going to call her after this. I've never really talked to her about it because I didn't have the communication skills back then, but I do now.
Where I said hi, and I'm thinking about Timmy.
Will do. Maybe I can even introduce you guys at some point. So
I'd love it. I would love it.
All right, Katie. Well, on a high note, please like, share, subscribe, submit a quick rating of the podcast. And yes, we're going to continue to make beautiful things from your experiences. And we're thinking of Nicholas as well. So thanks for joining me, Katie. And we'll be sure to put all your links, your website and the book information in the show notes. So thanks a lot.